Some voices don't fade away with time. In fact, they seem to get sharper, more focused. Today, we're diving into the life and work of Edward Said, a scholar whose ideas give us a really crucial and, for many people, an essential way of understanding history, power, and the conflicts that are still shaping our world right now. So, let's start here in 1992. I want you to picture this. The world-famous academic Edward Said is standing right outside his childhood home in Jerusalem. It's a home he can see, but he can't go inside. And in this one single powerful moment, you can feel the absolute core of his life's work. You've got dispossession, memory, and this deep sense of injustice. And that very personal moment, well, it connects directly to a much bigger picture. Take a look at these numbers. The year after Said stood outside his home, the Israeli settler population in the occupied Palestinian territory was about 250,000. Today, that number is a staggering 700,000. This isn't just a statistic on a chart. It's the real-world result of the exact political trend he spent his life analyzing and warning us about. So this really gets us to the main question we're asking today. Who was this man, this intellectual giant? And why, more than 2 decades after his death, do his ideas about power and conflict feel so incredibly on point, almost like they were written for the events we see unfolding today? Okay, so to really get his work, you have to understand the journey that made him who he was. Let's start with his childhood, an experience of being uprooted that really became the foundation for his entire worldview. Saad was actually born into a life of privilege in West Jerusalem. But then, in 1947, as violence was building, his family fled. They became part of what's known as the 1948 Nakba, the catastrophe, which displaced about 750,000 Palestinians. He ended up in the United States, went to top schools like Princeton and Harvard, and he even described himself as becoming a creature of an American WASP education. For a while, he was pretty disconnected from Middle Eastern politics. But all that detachment, it was about to change. One single event came along and completely shattered his world, turning him from a quiet academic into a lifelong advocate. That event was the 1967 war, when Israel fought Egypt, Jordan, and Syria and took control of the remaining Palestinian territories. For Said, who was watching all this unfold from New York, it was just world-ending. You can hear it in his words. He felt the ground literally shift under his feet, and he knew he just couldn't stay silent anymore. And here's where it gets really fascinating. Said saw this massive, jarring disconnect. On one hand, the US media was painting the war as this simple story: good guys versus bad guys, the enlightened West winning against the barbaric East. But on the other hand, for Arab Americans, it was a total travesty. This clash of realities is what sparked what's been called an Arab-American awakening, and Said was right at the center of it. So that awakening led him to write his most famous and most powerful work, the 1978 book, Orientalism. Let's break down this huge idea because it fundamentally changed how we talk about culture and power, even today. All right, so what is this thing he called Orientalism? In a nutshell, Said's argument was this: the East, or the Orient, isn't a real place. It's an idea that has been constructed by the West. It's a whole tradition of art and science and politics that represents the Middle East and Asia as this mythical, exotic, and ultimately inferior other. And here's why that's so important. This wasn't just about, some old paintings or bad Hollywood movies. Said showed how these stereotypes of Arabs and Asians as irrational or violent create a racist worldview. And that worldview has been used for centuries to justify real-world actions. Things like imperialism and colonialism. It's a system of knowledge that's used to create and maintain a system of power. And wow, did this book make waves. We're talking about one of the most influential scholarly books of the late 20th century. It basically created the entire field of post-colonial studies, and it's still required reading in universities all over the world. But Said, well, he was never going to be content to just stay in the library. He took this incredibly powerful intellectual framework and walked right into the political arena with it. And his political journey was really something. You can see this evolution, right? At first, he's this powerful voice on the outside, trying to humanize Palestinians for the rest of the world. Then, he actually gets on the inside, serving on the Palestinian National Council. But in the end, he became one of its sharpest critics, especially after the Oslo Accords in the 90s. I mean, pretty much everyone remembers that famous handshake on the White House lawn. The whole world saw it as this massive breakthrough for peace. But Said? No way. He saw something completely different. He called the Accords an instrument of Palestinian surrender, even a Palestinian Versailles. He argued that they locked Palestinians into a weak position and did absolutely nothing to stop the growth of Israeli settlements. And that brings us full circle, back to where we started. 2 decades after he passed away, why do these ideas, these really sharp critiques, feel so urgent, so alive right now? I think it's because he wasn't just talking about abstract theories. He was putting words to an ongoing reality. He gave a voice to this tragedy of feeling powerless against this constant machine of uprooting and destruction. And that's a feeling that, for many people, resonates very, very deeply today. Said passed away from leukemia in 2003. He was 67, and he left behind a world that is still wrestling with the exact same problems he dedicated his life to trying to untangle. And maybe that's his true legacy. It's not just about one opinion on one conflict. He gave all of us a new language, a set of intellectual tools to critically look at how power works, how our identities get shaped, and how the stories we are told are used to justify conflict. And so we're left with this question. In a world that is just overflowing with information and competing narratives, how is it possible that the work of a single scholar, decades later, can still offer us a fundamentally new and, for so many, a much clearer way to see the world around us?